30 minutes. We'll do 25 minutes of Q's and A's, and then we will end with recommendations. I would like to start with Mazi Okunu. The floor is yours, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Adobe. It's my pleasure to be here. The name is Mazi Alison Okono, and I am the CEO of Recycle Points and the president of the Recyclers Association of Nigeria. My background is in materials and metallurgical engineering and supply chain management and logistics. I started my career in the oil and gas sector for about 14 years, and then I delved into waste management accidentally due to a situation I had while, in the UK. I was penalized for, my family was penalized for recycling wrongly. We received a fine, and that embarrassing situation led to us, having to, look critically into the benefits that come from material recovery, which is also one of my background. So it's actually metamorphosed into us starting, my wife and I and a friend of ours, looking into starting a company in Nigeria that will clearly speak to the Nigerian ethos with regards to recovery. And that's how Recycle Points was started. Registered in 2012. By 2013, we had about just 4 workers, but now we have about 60 workers that span across 4 states in the country. And we are aggressively involved in collection of recyclable materials and making them ready for process or processing them, doing first-tier processing before they can go directly to plants that would use them to manufacture finished goods, both in country and out of the country. So is basically what we are doing. And then on the scale of harnessing the sector, we were able to come up with a situation where we felt to be able to network all the players in the recycling value chain, and that's what led to the Recycler Association of Nigeria platform. We are about 264 members strong that cuts across all geopolitical zones of the country, having regional heads that are, administering the activities of members, and just to try to make sure that we have a good and enabling praying ground for us to handle materials recovery. That's who I am. Thank you so much.
Mazi, thank you. I love that. Well, not opportunity, a challenge led to an opportunity in your case. I love that personal story. Thank you. I'd like to introduce next Ikenna Ofuegu. Ikenna, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So my name is Donald Ikenna Ofuegu. I'm the program coordinator for the Heinrich Ball Foundation. I lead projects around sustainability. This spans around sustainability around renewable energy space, sustainability in the agricultural sector, sustainability around waste management, and the likes. Part of those projects is actually to also look at Nigeria's energy mix. And while thinking and pressing for sustainable solutions like renewable energy, part of our, should I say, obligation, it's also to look at and provide measures to address possible challenges like the waste that comes out of these solutions that we are kind of like pressing forward. So it's really been a nice journey, pressing on from the identification of ULAB waste, up to this junction. A lot has actually changed. So I trust that we'll be sharing and getting more insight as we go along the discussion. Thank you.
Ikenna, thank you very much. Tese, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daobi. My name is Tese Ubo. I am the Executive Secretary of the Alliance for Responsible Battery Recycling. I'm also the founder and CEO of the Recycling and Economic Development Initiative of Nigeria, Reading, of course, with the subsidiary Reading Recycling Industries. Our mandate really as an organization is to help manage the waste products from battery usage in Nigeria. So the Alliance for Responsible Battery Recycling was established in 2019 by NESRA, that was the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, to look at the issues surrounding management of used batteries in Nigeria, the entire value chain from collection to transportation, storage, recycling, and export of used batteries from Nigeria. This became necessary because of the huge amount of pollution going on in the country as a result of companies, corporate organizations, and private individuals disposing of used batteries in the wrong way. We were lucky to have a partner with Renewable, who has been very supportive in conducting studies and research into the management of used batteries in the country. So we're proud to announce that the Battery Alliance was finally set up, and we've entered partnerships with the telecom sector. We're also in partnerships with the renewable energy sector, helping to provide guidance on how the renewable energy sector can best collect used batteries from their customers through a take-back system that we've put in place, and how these batteries should be transported according to the guidelines provided by NESRA, and of course, hopefully end up at registered recycling facilities that have been accredited and certified to have the right technology to recycle batteries in Nigeria. And a couple of recycling facilities have also stepped up and improved their recycling technologies and processes. And this has given us some hope that we're on the right track towards responsible management of batteries in the country. So hopefully as we go along in the program, we'll get to talk a little bit more about the work that is being done and how the sector as a whole can key into what has been proposed by the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, all three of you. Why don't we kick off the session now? We have about 30 minutes. I'd like to start off talking about awareness, right? This is a new industry. This is a specifically nascent infant part of the sector. I'd like to start with you, Mazi. First of all, do we even have figures on the volume of waste in Nigeria? Let's start with that. Is there data on the volume of waste?
Yes, thank you, Adobe. Yes, the thing is, I will have to be factual. We really don't have reliable figures, and the challenge has always been the drill down on the kind of volumes that we have coming in, and having effective collection systems that will clearly give us that kind of reliable data to work on. So we really don't have, when we call reliable data to the volume of materials we are handling. And it's always a challenge, because these data is important in that they are necessary to inform investment decisions and strategies that need to support whatever framework that needs to be put in place, to get us in a good space. Every sector at the moment is trying to be able to organize, to have structures in place that will allow for information to be a lot more accurate. But people tend to most times exaggerate figures just to, push the point. But it's clear that a lot of work has to be put in place to ensure that we have an effective monitoring system that will give us reliable data. Yeah.
Okay, Mazi, thank you. I'm going to stay with you. So even if we don't have specific volumes, we know that there is waste. We're very much aware of the fact that there is a heavy volume. Staying with you, what are the potential opportunities in recycling of solar panels?
It's huge. It's huge, and as it's clear that our position in the globe allows us to be able to harness, the energy that comes from the sun And solar panels actually would clearly support the energy deficiency that we have as a country. So it is it's important that if we can be able to leverage on this very important and free resource, we should be able to, you know, have a proliferation of a lot of panels. And what that informs is that as most of these items come to the end of their useful life, we need to be able to have systems in place that would support the recovery of these items and the assembly and the regeneration of these materials, you know, to either produce new items. So there is a huge potential. The panels itself has a lot of materials and aids, both coming from the panel, be it silicon-based panels or the otherwise. They have things in them, the components, we can be all dismantled for us to be able to use. And it also helps us in conservation efforts, because these materials, I tell people that Nigeria is a consumer-driven country, and being consumer-driven, we hardly produce these items. And our market is huge in the sense that we are seen as a huge market for, you know, selling these components. So if we don't have an opportunity to be able to extract these items when they've come to their useful end, we are basically just throwing away a whole lot of resource. And it is important that we look into frameworks to be able to allow us extract this to support some kind of reprocessing, either to export and generate and increase our GDP and Forex, or to internally use most of the products here to produce other useful items.
Thank you. So I think as always happens, we try to run before we can walk. So you're all subject matter experts. So this awareness is pretty basic to all of you. But I think there's a fundamental lack of awareness generally, even among stakeholders who are in the sector. Tese, can we talk about the role of, first of all, do we have recycling plants in Nigeria? Let's start there.
Yes, we do. We have a few recycling plants in the country. Historically, Nigeria had over 10 battery production plants, recycling and production plants. Unfortunately, due to what I'll call maybe government policy, many of the battery plants shut down and left the country. The only battery manufacturer who is still managing to manufacture batteries in the country is the Ibeto Group, located at Anambra State. We have a few battery assemblers who have recently come on, some investors who have come in and are setting up battery assembling plants. For recycling, you know, the process of manufacturing batteries requires that you recycle the batteries, you know, you recycle used batteries to manufacture new batteries, because the contents of these batteries are recyclable over and over again, basically lead, plastics, and electrolytes, which are basically the battery acid. So Ibeto recycles batteries for the manufacture of new batteries, but they are the only ones who do that. There are a few other recyclers who have established rotary furnaces to smelt battery wastes, basically the lead, and then of course to treat the battery acids too. And then the plastic casings are also collected and crushed and used for the manufacture of outdoor plastic products like chairs and tables. Ibeto uses the plastic casing of the batteries to manufacture fans for cars. That's the fan blades for vehicles. Yeah, so there's some recycling going on. We've done we've tried to do some kind of mapping of the recycling plants in the country. And we found that a couple of them have made investments recently into modern recycling technologies. We're not where we need to be because most of them still break batteries manually, which causes a lot of acid to leak into the soil. So we still have a lot of soil pollution and water pollution around facilities that are currently recycling batteries, due to the fact that many of them still do manual breaking of these batteries and still adopt some processes that are not completely clean. But we are happy that they've made efforts. There's been some improvements, and we're in talks with several development partners and international investors who have indicated interest to establish a state-of-the-art battery recycling plants for Nigeria, so that we can mop up the used batteries, especially from the renewable energy sector, and use these used batteries to remanufacture brand new batteries and push back into the market for the sector. So that is where we are, and that is what we've been doing. And we're hoping that next year will be a year where we can make even greater milestones in terms of establishing recycling plants suited specifically and targeted for managing batteries from the renewable energy sector in Nigeria.
Thank you. So I'm going to stay with you for one more question on plants. You talked about Ibeto and the fact that there aren't that many, but what is the responsibility of the recycling plants that do exist in raising awareness? So they're in the business, they see the challenges, they understand the challenges. How are they themselves raising awareness?
Yeah, so the Federal Ministry of Environment through NESRA established what we call the Extended Producer Responsibility Program. Basically, it's a framework that requires every organization within the value chain, within the battery value chain, from the producer, which includes the manufacturer or the importer of batteries, to the battery dealer or the retailer, the retailers, which includes renewable energy companies who retail batteries for their end customers, and then to the battery collectors, used battery collectors, transportation, of used batteries, and then of course to recycling. As part of this entire framework, there's another organization in between called the Producer Responsibility Organization that is also part of the EPR program, and is established to help coordinate all the activities of these players in the value chain, and then of course help manage the advocacy, public awareness, and all that goes with creating the right sensitization in the public, amongst the public, on the hazards of used batteries and how best used batteries should be managed. One of the major challenges that we've seen is the issue of transportation. We noticed that a lot of batteries get transported from across the country. Because all the recycling facilities are located in the southern part of the country, many batteries get collected from northern Nigeria and transported in trucks that also transport food. So if a truck transports used batteries from Abuja or from Kano to Lagos, it will definitely get contaminated with acid and lead dust. So if that same truck transports food like wheat, noodles and things like that back up north, they'll be transferring lead, to people's homes, and this lead will get into people's blood, get into children, and end up creating a lot of health problems in Nigeria. So these are some of the challenges and some of the awareness and creation that we've been pushing for, to get the transporters to be aware of the challenges and to learn the guidelines on how to safely transport used batteries in trucks that are dedicated for transportation of used batteries because of the hazards involved. And of course, the recyclers themselves have a responsibility to enlighten their vendors, that's the scrap dealers who collect batteries and deliver to their facilities. They also have a responsibility to enlighten them on the hazards of these used batteries. And then of course, provide guidance on how batteries should be stacked, how they should be collected, and batteries must always be delivered to recycling facilities with the acid contained in them. So under no circumstance should a recycler receive batteries from vendors who deliver batteries without acid, because delivering batteries without acid means the battery has been broken open and the acid has been spilled into the environment somewhere before it was delivered to the recycler. So some of these issues, we've done several capacity building workshops and engagement with the recycling facilities, and we've brought them up to speed on what needs to be done and the role that they need to play to ensure that battery collectors do not collect batteries and dispose of acids in the environment before the acid arrive at these recycling plants. So there's a broad range of activities and stuff that need to be done, that they need to do, and that everybody within the value chain needs to do. And ourselves as the PRO for the sector, the Battery Alliance, we also play a very major role in the advocacy aspects of in the battery sector for all sectors and all individuals across board.
Fantastic. I say thank you. So we know the challenges. We know that this is a nightmare waiting to happen if we don't proactively now start putting together these frameworks you've talked about. So I think as in everything, everywhere in the world, there has to be government contribution, right? So Mazi, question for you. What is the role of government? What's happening now, and what more can the government be doing, if anything?
Yes, thank you. Our government should clearly be strategic with the issue that has to do with renewable energy recovery and recycling. And like Tessa mentioned, at the moment we have guidelines to support extended producer responsibility activities, which is one that led to producer responsibility organizations, of which Tessa represents, and a whole lot of others. I also know about the e-waste extended producer responsibility association or something, the apron, and then a whole lot. So, and the idea of having that particular framework for EPR means that the government will be more of like an enabler driving activities and ensuring that every of the all stakeholders in this particular framework own up to their responsibilities and are accountable to whatever they have to do to make sure that this situation is clearly does not get out of hand. Because as of today, people still see the renewable energy industry in Nigeria as a niche area, and it doesn't look like it's commanding the kind of volumes that would create a lot of attention. But then you find out that you can never tell, because like we mentioned earlier, because we are really not aware of the figures that are in place there. You know, importers are bringing in various kinds of items out there that have a promise for renewable energy. So it's all flooding our markets, and if we don't have government structure that helps to monitor and ensure that every stakeholder aligns to the strategies and policies, then we will clearly have a situation in our hands by the time things get out of hand. And it's important that we continue to call the attention of government, to make sure that they have this particular area or sector in key interest, so that we can also harness the benefits that come from it. Huge benefit that comes from having to put up a strategic plan and follow it effectively, ensuring stakeholders are committed to whatever mandates they have with regards to this. And I pray that our own government, through NESRA and even the Federal Ministry of Environment and the various, the challenge also we have most times in our country is that we have a centralized activity happening at the federal level, which most times comes in total conflict with what happens at the state level. So all stakeholders in this particular value chain need to be, in alliance to be able to make sure that things work out well. And I think the onus lies on governments to create that environment where you have stakeholders are happy to come in and engage, for the benefit of this particular sector. Yeah.
Nazi, thank you. We're going to come back to government's role, but before we do, I started off by saying that the EU is the only region that actually has policies enacted to deal with this sector. Iken, I have a question for you. So we know that Nigeria is not alone. We're not saying it's a good story, but this is not a Nigeria or Africa specific issue, right? So my question for you, Iken, is let's even talk about the standards. Can you share some of the global standards? What are we aspiring to?
Okay, so in globally, I think, like you said, EU is actually the first region that has a standard for e-waste management. But this is actually growing. There's a lot of awareness that is actually coming within the space. India, I think like 2 years ago, they've also made such progress towards coming up with a broad e-waste policy, especially for within the energy space. They're actually putting that together. And Nigeria is somehow not also doing badly. We already have an extended producer responsibility regulation through NESRA that is actually working. The Ministry of Environment is working closely with GIZ and the Alliance for Responsible Battery Recycling. And they are working on developing a policy for used lead acid battery regulation. NESRA has, I think they just concluded like a major draft of the ULAB regulation also in Nigeria to regulate how lead batteries will be managed, not just lead, but also lithium. It's going to be, it's actually a broad spectrum. So in terms of the regulatory framework, Nigeria is not doing badly. We're kind of like trying to catch up with the technology, and the timing is also right, you know, with renewable energy also expanding. We don't have any big national or global documents that would say this is the standard. The closest we'll pick will be the Basel Convention that kind of like stipulates how hazardous materials should be handled. So for instance, within the solar panels, we have things like lead, silicon, we have aluminum in there, we have cadmium in there. So for those hazardous materials, how should they be managed? How should they be drained? How should they be treated? So the Basel Convention kind of like sets that standard, and Nigeria is signatory to the Basel Convention. I think we were signatories since 1989, but you know, it's one thing to be a signatory, and it's something, another thing to actually have the right framework and mechanisms to actually implement what is expected of you in terms of managing this waste. So a lot of parts that Nigeria has played within this convention is actually just really exporting those hazardous materials, because we don't have the facilities to, you know, manage these hazardous materials like lead that comes from the battery, or managing solar panel waste. We don't have so much of that. Like I'm not aware of any recycling plants that recycle solar panels in Nigeria. Tessa has mentioned a good number of plants. At least we have Ibeto, and I think I know 2 companies that are also within that process of registering their own ULAB plants. So if it's in terms of regulation, Nigeria is beginning to pick up within that space. We have policies like the ESIA, Environmental Social Impact Assessments Act, that has been passed. It's the new act kind of like makes provision to cover for how solar panels, you know, the mini grids, the energy storage system should be managed. We have that already as an act. You know, it's a new improvement. So it's about implementing them that we really need to see. A lot of international companies, investments have also gone into the areas of managing this, and it's been safe. We can't compare whatever damage or whatever problems that may come from solar panels to what has happened in, you know, coal and gas and oil and gas. So the regulatory frameworks are being in place, and everybody is heading towards a better standard.
Okay, thank you. Final question on that point. Mazi, this one is for you. Based on everything we know, what we've talked about, what's obtaining in the EU and what's not obtaining in other industrialized nations, let's bring it back to Nigeria. Are we hopeful, or is there a possibility that here in Nigeria, we can actually kickstart a designated waste collection strategy, as is done in the industrial parts of the world where this is actually possible?
Thank you.
That one's for you, Mazi.
Yes, Adobe, it's very, very possible. I see it's a huge potential area, and until we start paying attention to it, we would never understand the value that comes out of this kind of activity. I'll give a particular example. You know, but for COVID, this year would have been the Olympics, and I remember that earlier in the year, Japan, who was supposed to be hosting that Olympics, was making a very aggressive call for people to, you know, recycle their phones from where they will be able to extract, you know, gold, silver, bronze that would serve as the resources for the medals that will be given out to athletes at the Olympics. And that tells you that a country like that would be able to come up with that kind of activity. And it was all from, what we call urban mining of the elements that we find in the gadgets that we use on a daily basis. I want to believe that if Adobe, I told you that your phone, has gold and very valuable precious metals in them, you wouldn't want to just, toss it away after, it malfunctions. So the idea is that with the kind of country that we have and the population that we have, it's clearly an environment that will produce a lot of value if we can, pick up all these elements, because it's a lot comes to, composition of, the setup that allows us to benefit from renewable energy resources. And if we have the systems, in place, structures in place that will clearly, we're talking about unemployment in our country, and it is one that we don't have playbooks that would allow people to, look at what would it take for us to be able to dismantle the component in such a way that we can extract, the value that is in that component, both the packaging and all that. So it's a huge area, and I think as a country, we need to be a little bit more strategic and clinical in this space.
Mazi, thank you. I love the example you gave about Japan, right? So we are a massive consumer nation in Nigeria, and I like this idea that if people understood, like you said, everybody has a mobile phone. So if people understood that there's money to be made, if you turn in your phone, we can extract stuff to reproduce, and there's something in it for you. So is it then, I'd like each of you to touch on this. So it all seems like a bit of a no-brainer. So you guys are SMEs, you've explained it in very layman's terms. So what do we think is the blocker? Is it just that we just don't know? Is it just that the government agencies, is it just that we're all into it as a business, but stakeholders really don't even understand themselves, the potential here? I'll start with you, Mazi, because you brought up the conversation. So what is it? What do you think it takes?
It's a lot. It takes a lot. We're not talking like I earlier pointed. You see, at the moment we are not really producing these products. A lot of it comes into our space from companies that are involved in the manufacturing of the panels to the inverters, and then even the battery, like Tess mentioned. It's just a few companies that are doing this. So it's a lot for us to be able to see that there has to be technology transfer to get these activities happening in our space. But then if for instance, we see it as a huge thing to, be in that space where we are involved in manufacturing and we are the end users, I think, onus lies on us to be able to have setups that can clearly, systems that can clearly recover these items from wherever they are. And then we have, basically skilled people that would be trained to handle the extraction of these valuable materials according to best practices. So it is important, and it is when that I feel like frameworks need to be put in place. Some kind of, like I use the word playbook, that stakeholders will come together, and by stakeholders I mean end to end, people that are in this particular value chain, from the producers of silicon-based items to the people that are producing the final panels and inverter systems. Everyone is a stakeholder, and then to those that are even importing the items into the country, and the consumer protection kind of entities and association and initiatives, we all have to come together to be able to come up with something that makes it easy, for people to get involved in this recovery, because it's a lot of cost. The processing, like he mentioned, the processing of these items, it doesn't, the machinery to get it done and to adhere to those best practices is quite huge. So that's why you see people, because we have the survival mentality, everybody just feels like doing whatever they want to do to make sure that they put food on the table. And that comes at huge, health and economic costs to us as a country. So I think a lot needs to be done to bring us all together and then come up with strategic programs that would clearly see an end-to-end activity in this particular space, so that we can be able to have a hand on or grip on the issue. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So Mazi, you've talked about awareness or lack of awareness as one of the challenges. Ikem, I'd like to hear from you. I started off by saying, based on what I'm hearing here, it's pretty much a no-brainer. There's potential. Everybody can see a nightmare about to happen. So share with me, outside of what Mazi has said, what other blockers are there?
Okay, I think for me, the government needs to be deliberate. Like when I mean deliberate, it needs to be very, very deliberate and convinced of what they plan to achieve or how they perceive the environment. So one of the biggest challenges with recycling, either energy, waste from energy or any other form, is the cost. And I mean, we see the same thing with gas flaring. The cost of flaring, it's really, it's far cheaper than you actually trunking it into either gas for power, whatever it is. And so the government needs to be deliberate. You need to be deliberate in compensating and encouraging people that invest their resource, their time in protecting and preserving the environment. The government, I don't think the government has seen, they may say it, but I don't think the government understands the short, medium, and long-term goals of protecting the environment. We've not seen the numbers. The government is not convinced. And that is why you see a lot of policy somersaults. Once we create the right enabling environment, you get all the investors you need. And one of the things I tell people is, look, we have a system that creates cabal on its own. Create the right environment, enabling environment, an environment that allow people to save nature, to save the environment. Renewable energy companies, we need policies that would allow these people to come and invest. We need subsidies for those that are into recycling business. As long as you're into recycling business, the government should pay you. Let's not even call it subsidy. You should be paid for saving the environment, ridding the environment of all the waste. We need to see policy harmony in that direction. We're not talking about the Ministry of Finance says give them subsidy, and then we see FIRS, shooting VAT at 10, 20% at these companies and tax, shooting. No, we're talking about pay companies that are into recycling. Either they are battery recycling, plastic recycling, they need to be compensated for paying, for protecting the environment. So we've not seen that happen because the government does not understand. So how do we make the government understand? So those of us in the system that are practitioners, Mazi, Tessa, show us the figures. You started your company with just 4 employees. In less than 3 years, we're talking about 60 people. How did it happen? I mean, if we have 40 companies like yours, we're talking about, I mean, you could imagine the number of youths that would have been removed from the NSAS protest, and maybe some of them would have been alive today if we have this kind of policies that promote businesses like Mazi's business. So we need to be able to show the figures, even if the figures are not accurate, but show the success story. What does the government stand to gain in terms of the number of jobs we would have created? What kind of policies do we need? Because we know these things in labor, but I don't believe there's conviction. The government is not yet convinced, so we're not seeing deliberate action. If we have deliberate action, then along the entire value chain, there are lots of things that can be done. For those that are into transport businesses, we'll see state governments, we'll see local government chairmen investing even in this value chain, going into partnerships. So I think what's missing is the story, the narrative of creating jobs from recycling, the narrative from protecting the environment from from pollution through recycling. Let us see the numbers. How many women can we engage through this process? How much CO2? And put them well packaged, proven stories, success stories like this. I've not seen that anywhere. Sincerely, I have not. I've not seen a Nigerian narrative with figures and jobs that it's sitting down on the table of the presidency saying, look, if you want to get out 10,000 Nigerian youths from the street, unemployed youths, put these policies in place. And we're talking about policies, just simple policies to make everybody fly. So we've not seen that happen. So there's no deliberate action, there's no deliberate commitment from the government. And just like Mazi said, everything is too centralized. So NESRA and the Ministry of Environment, they've done beautifully well in their effort to put in place policies. But one of the things we see on ground is by the time you inspect a battery recycling plant in Ota, in Ogun State, somewhere in Lagos, you go to those plants and they tell you they are certified by the Lagos State government. So even if they are polluting or causing all the hazards, nobody checks them because they tell you they've already paid the Lagos State government. So many of the national policies, we need to be able to bring them down to sub-regional states. We need to see states governments understanding these issues, understanding the multiplier effect, and then seeing the narrative, because we need to stop seeing it as, so I try not to see it as a problem. I see it as jobs. I see it as empowerment, and then people like Mazi, who are like the protectors of the environment, we need to pay them. Not subsidy, but pay them, actually pay them. Remove all tax holidays, remove all import waivers to bring in the right machines, create enabling environments for them and let them thrive. So with this, I think we would have gone a long way. So these are what, yeah.
Thank you. So not to make this sound like this is just government. Government has a big part to play. So government has their part. But like you rightly said, it's a simple case of show me the money. Why? What's in it for all the stakeholders? Tessa, question for you. What is the role of recycling associations or bodies in this awareness campaign? First of all, how big is that? How many, I don't know, not how many bodies, but are there lots of bodies? And what is their role?
Yeah, well, I think government, the Federal Ministry of Environment, NESRA, has adopted the Extended Producer Responsibility Framework. This is a global best practice where companies that are involved in the manufacture of products must take responsibility for the entire value chain of their products, including the end of life of these products. So it's a cradle to cradle, they call it, or cradle to grave kind of responsibility, where you have to be responsible for the end product of the products that you bring to the market. Now, if this extended producer responsibility program was properly enforced, what it will mean is that all products that are sold on the Nigerian markets will have an environmental fee attached to them. These fees will be deducted at the point of sale and collected in a fund that will be built up over time and then will be used to incentivize the recycling companies or organizations who want to go or who want to get involved in the recycling sector. And the reason why this is necessary, like Ikena mentioned, recycling is more expensive than the cost of disposal. And so somebody has to pay for recycling. For batteries, for example, lithium-ion batteries have very little second-hand value. So if a lithium-ion battery currently gets to its end of life, even the cost of collecting, transporting, and exporting these batteries out of the country is far more expensive than the value of the product that you're trying to export. So it is a net loss if you're going to get involved in the collection and recycling of lithium-ion batteries right now in the country. So companies that bring these batteries into the country or manufacture and sell these batteries to Nigeria need to pay something on these batteries for environmental responsibility for the collection of these batteries at the end of life. Luckily for lead acid batteries, they have a second-hand value because of the lead contents and the acid that can be converted to ammonium nitrate or something and used for fertilizer production and all that. So there's a second-hand value there. And that is why it is a little bit easy to collect and recycle used batteries. The problem is that the process is not done properly and ends up causing a lot more pollution for our environment, for those who want to be involved in the battery collection and recycling industry. Now, I will just a little bit about what needs to be done. Some of the things that needs to be done. Of course, regulation, very, very important. Government needs to put in place policies and regulations that ensure that people, and publicize these regulations and policies so that people do the right thing. And then these policies must be backed with proper enforcement. Government must be ready to bring the hammer down on enforcement for companies or organizations that do not comply with the legal policies that have been put in place. NESRA has really picked up a lot of enforcement right now. especially for the renewable energy battery sector, especially for e-waste. And so there's some traction going on in that area, in the area of enforcement. And then a collection mechanism. You mentioned earlier about international community societies where collection and all that is being done seamlessly. Here we're a very informal sector. So most of the collectors are informal, they're scavengers, they're not registered anywhere. They just do this business to make a living, really. We need to bring these informal collectors under a more formal system, register them under collectors and recyclers so that we know exactly what they're collecting and where they're delivering these batteries to. This is very, very important and it needs to be done. We've also implemented take-back programs, take-back schemes with REA, for example, the Rural Electricity Agency. They recently included it as a condition to participate in some components of the REA project. You must have a partnership under the APR program to show that you have made a commitment towards implementing a take-back program. So when for example, I know that the REA is currently implementing the small home systems, the small home systems across the country. The target was to install these systems in, I think, 1 or 2 million homes around the country. Now we need to think about what structures are in place, what mechanisms are in place to ensure that when these batteries start getting to end of life, they are properly documented and collected back and sent for proper recycling. And so we're happy that REA has taken the step to include the EPR registration as a criteria to participate in their projects. And we hope that they will extend this criteria, this requirement to cover the entire value chain or the entire projects under their portfolio. So collection is important. Implementing take-back schemes are very important, both for the battery sector, for e-waste. These are the low-hanging fruits. And, when you can put up a mechanism that helps you collect, take back this waste properly, solar panels, batteries, charge controllers, inverters that have gotten to end of life. The first step is to ensure that you have a proper mechanism to take back these waste products. Once you take them back, then you can think of how to recycle them, where to deliver them for recycling. The challenge a lot of times is that you take waste, back from the consumer, but because there aren't proper recycling facilities to recycle this waste, they end up get mixed back together and sometimes even go back to the dump site. So there must be recycling facilities ready to take this up. Because we are a signatory to the Basel Convention, the Basel Convention has given us the platform for transboundary movement of hazardous waste. So Nigeria has adopted this Basel Convention. So when we don't have a local recycler to manage waste in the country, then we have the opportunity to export this waste to countries that have the technology and the facilities to recycle them. And we've taken advantage of this in the last couple of years. So a lot of the used batteries in the country have been exported out of the country to India, to China, to Europe, and to America for proper recycling. But now that we have a few recyclers locally, many of them have also started smelting the batteries locally. Of course, the lead ingots usually still end up being exported, because we don't have battery manufacturers or solar panel manufacturers in the country. And then finally, I'll just talk a little bit about the financial incentives. Now, in Nigeria, everything that has to do with recycling is almost like a CSR kind of thing. It has to be funded through support from development partners, through grants and things like that, because the financial institutions in Nigeria don't see the value in supporting recycling projects in the country. So we've had several projects where we've made proposals to banks to support recycling projects, but they always shy away because they're not built to understand, or they've not made enough effort to understand the value in recycling and how they can put more funding towards recycling. And I'll give a very quick example before I round up now. I set up a tire recycling plant some years ago in Abuja, where we recycled automotive tires into rubber mats, rubber tiles, and things like that for playgrounds, even for race tracks and the rest. Now, the major challenge we had in our facility was the problem of collection of this waste and delivering to our facility. We had to commission agents who go around the city to collect tires and deliver to the facility. And we run into a lot of problems. Number one, we use tires in Nigeria until the tires are completely worn out. So the quantity of rubber left in these tires are really small. So if you had a facility that is supposed to take 1,000 tires per day and is supposed to give you, say, 500 tons of rubber, you end up getting 100 tons of rubber from 1,000 tires because we use the tires until the tires are completely worn out. You see, so then that was one challenge on one side, and then the cost of collection, transportation, and delivering tires to our facility. We spoke to government to provide some kind of support in the collection process. We are a recycling facility, but we have to take the role of collecting tires from the streets, transporting tires to our facilities, recycling these tires before we produce the products that we need to produce and bring back to the markets to recover our investments. You see, so we are involved in too much work, and this work is not being financed by anybody. And that is where EPR comes in. So the companies that produce tires and bring tires into the country have to be responsible for paying something for the collection and delivery of these tires to recycling facilities. That is why EPR is very important. And that is why the EPR program really, for now, is the best, it's really the best framework that has to be adopted by every sector, plastic sector, the Coca-Colas of this world. They have to also support the recycling. They have to pay something on every single bottle of plastic that they bring into the Nigerian market, so that recyclers who have invested in recycling can be released of the burden of having to invest in the collection. Collection should be supported by the manufacturers or the producers, while the recyclers focus on their recycling businesses to support this collection process that is put in place. So these are some of the things that need to be done. I know that the regulations for the sector are currently up. I'm happy that RA has taken steps to partner with us to get their contractors up to speed and to get them licensed and registered under the EPR program. That is really good. NESRA has also recently concluded the regulations for battery control. I know that there are also work going on with Standard Organization of Nigeria concerning solar panels, charge controllers, and inverters for renewable energy systems, and how we can improve the standards of these products so that they don't end up, the turnaround time for these products are quite longer. So these products have a longer lifespan so that they don't come into the end of life market too soon. And then we have a huge pile of waste all the time because the products we import into the country end up becoming waste quicker than they should. An average battery should last 4 years, but it end up lasting 1 or 2 years in Nigeria because it is low quality, first of all, and then it is not properly installed. So there are a lot of issues concerning how waste is generated and the volume of waste that we see in Nigeria. And of course, the companies themselves, like the telecom companies, the banks, the corporate organizations who are the huge users of batteries, bulk users of batteries, the mini grid projects, bulk users of batteries also have to take some responsibility to ensure that the used batteries that they generate out of their facilities are delivered to the appropriate recycling channels, so that we can gradually begin to reduce the volumes of waste from the sector, from the RE sector, that goes into the hands of dirty recyclers. So I think if we can achieve all this, yeah, thank you.
That's a great place to not stop, but pause. I think what I'm hearing, the red line in all the conversations, in all the questions you all have answered this afternoon, we need a framework, we need guidelines. This has to be a multi-stakeholder activity. Right now, we're just working blindly. We don't have data, there's no research. Meanwhile, there's a thriving industry, and all that just needs to be more organized. In the interest of time, we're going to continue this conversation in the Q&A section. We've run over by about 10 minutes. Just want to really thank 3 of you for what's been a very informative discussion. Let's continue the discussion now by inviting the audience for the next, let's say 20 minutes. I'm sure some of what you've touched on will also be, you have to repeat, and you probably have to, you will answer more questions that helps you expand more on some of your remarks. So without much ado, it's almost 6 o'clock. Let's invite the audience to ask questions. Let's see. So audience members, I believe you're all muted. So I'm assuming with the way we'll do this is I'm going to go into the chats and just pick out questions from the
we
chat.
have George here. We have George here, Mr. George.
I'm sorry. Oh, George. Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So,
hi. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you. Hello, George.
Okay. Hi, Adobe, and hi. Good evening, gentlemen. Tessa, Ikena, and Mazi. Thanks for a very informative session. Really, there's a lot of work, obviously, that we need to do. So I think my question is really a simple one. I know a lot of times the private sector basically drives, things in this country. We can't overstate government's importance, really. But the question still remains, the recycling plants, we had about 10, if I heard what you guys said earlier, and we're now down to 1. I mean, it's just only Ibeto. I mean, something really, what are the things, that's not, what are the key things that's responsible for this? Why are people not able to sustain this growing? I mean, renewable energy transition is definitely the way to go. It's gonna stay. We have a huge energy, gap in this country, energy and power. So why is it that we're not really progressing in this space? What's the reason? Why did we go down from 10 to 1 recycling plant in the whole of Nigeria? Okay. It's quite worrisome. So that's the question I have.
George, thank you for that question. Mazi, I think you were the one that talked about Ibeto, correct?
Yeah, so yes. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the challenge here is that right from what Tessa said, let me start with the issues that we have. Logistics is a major problem. I also that we have a huge infrastructural deficit in our country that would create that enabling environment for entities that are in this space to thrive. Remember, we actually term these things as waste. So with that ideology that people have that it is waste, most times in it, we need to be a bit cost effective in both collection, handling, and then the final processing. And because we have a very poor infrastructural system, just to transport items from point A to point B could erode the entire value that you're supposed to get. Tessa was talking about having us use items till we have exceeded their, even the manufacturers would be surprised when you tell them that you are still using their item because they actually built it to stay for a particular period. But you find out that in our space, we excessively use these items, So it's a challenge for us to be able to, run in a system or in an environment where you don't have very clear and strategic framework that will make what you are doing efficient and seamless. And I'm not even going to go into the idea of that has to come with stakeholder or in bringing the entire stakeholders to make this work, because when you have stakeholders that do not understand, what you are trying to achieve, it becomes a big issue for you because everybody is out there trying to make a living, and you find out that people that are supposed to now be supporting you are actually, out there making life difficult for you. So that's why you see those recycling plans when they clearly don't see the strategic support, and a framework to work on. It's a hustle, to be able to survive or thrive. And there, at some point, you don't even know where to, go out for help. Tessa talked about financial institutions not even knowing what we are talking about, let alone having to, intervene with support with funds to drive most of these issues. And the space is not one that is as simple as it is. You need to be able to meet certain regulatory standards to be able to produce stuff that, even if you want to be able to export those materials, there needs to be some kind of, I would say, policy regulatory guidelines for which, you need to, operate on. So it's a huge, the environment at the moment in our country, it's not one that is not clearly strategic with regards to, providing an enabling situation for the companies to be profitable. And if you're not profitable, I don't see any reason for you to, depend on handouts or donations or, like you said, incentives to continue to work. It's the structure and strategy needs to be very holistic, and the sustainability plan needs to be strong. So I think these are the challenges that companies are having. We clearly have not been a little bit more strategic to enhance this. And again, also, I think, which has been reiterated by a lot of the panelists here, we need a framework, we need a playbook, we need something that if you get to look at it, it makes things easy for you, that connects all the dots with regards to what you need to do to make sure that you are not, involved in so much of a hustle. So I think that's the major challenges that you see all those companies going out of business. Yeah.
Okay, let me also come in, and Adaobi went off briefly. I think she's back now. But let me just step in and explain a few things, at least from my perspective. In the 90s, during the time when Nigeria was in the military regime, there were a lot of sanctions placed on Nigeria, foreign currency issues, import duty issues and all that from several countries around the world. And this created a lot of problems for local companies to thrive in Nigeria, assessing currencies, and all that for raw materials. And then, of course, then there were a lot of policy issues that made.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah. So
hi, can people hear me?
We can hear you, but the network is quite poor.
Sorry, guys. Can people hear Adobe?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Sorry, I've switched to my phone because my technology has failed. Apologies.
Yeah. So can I go on? Okay. So because of the government policies, poor government policies in the 90s, especially, many of the companies in the country, tire manufacturers, textile companies, battery manufacturing companies, and a whole lot of other industries shut down and moved their manufacturing out of Nigeria. Nigeria became an import-dependent country when these companies all started shifting out of Nigeria. Now, since we've been back to democracy, since 1999, there's been a lot of improvement in terms of government trying to create some kind of level playing field and policy and all that to bring manufacturers back to the country. But we noticed that despite all the efforts, there are only a few adventurous investors into the Nigerian space. Most of the investors are happy to invest in sectors that are currently already running and existing with very little risk. But in sectors that don't really have a lot of local capacity currently, like manufacturing of automobile parts, renewable energy parts, which is an emerging sector, many investors are very reluctant to invest in these sectors. Not because, there are issues of power and things like that make it not too conducive to operate in the country. But I think we've gotten very reliant on imports. It is easier and it is more friendlier to import into the country. I mean, you just have to send money out there and bring the goods here. So I think the average Nigerian investor has gotten lazy about establishing industries and running industry. We've asked these questions many times. Yeah, we agree that Ibeto has been having a lot of issues, mainly because of cheap battery imports into the country, especially in the automotive sector. Now, Ibeto is producing batteries of high quality, basically European quality batteries that will sell for an average of, say, 25, 30,000 naira for a 45 amp battery. But the same 45 amp battery coming from Asia will sell for 18,000 naira or 20,000 naira. Now, Ibeto cannot compete with Chinese manufacturers who have gotten subsidies from their governments to export goods cheaply from China into other countries. So even America, even the European countries are crying, are suffering from Chinese influx of goods. So this is a global problem that Nigeria is also faced with, and it is why the manufacture of batteries and panels has not had a quick uptake in the country. So I think a lot of what needs to be done has to be deliberate government policies to force manufacturers or importers of batteries to, at a minimum, assemble these products locally. So the more we can have solar panel assembling plants in the country, battery assembling plants in the country to create some jobs locally, at least the last mile of these manufacturing processes, I think this will be better for our economy overall. Thanks.
Thank you. Guys, can you hear Adobe?
Yes, we can.
Unfortunately, I'm on my phone now. I've lost access to the chat room. So are there questions in the chat room? I'm going to have, for the audience who are asking questions, if you don't mind just directing your questions to the panelists. And then panelists, you're going to have to help me during the Q's and A's. I can't see the questions.
Okay, I'll read out the question and then I'll direct the questions to either Mazi or Tessa. Since I'm reading the question, I'll have to save my own head. So the first question is from Gabriel, and Gabriel is asking, what are the opportunities for private investors in the sector? Mazi.
And who's that question to? Mazi, okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Because I'm also trying to manage my technology. So yes, opportunities exist for private people in this space, and if you look at the items that we are talking about, the photovoltaic cells, they are either silicon-based or thin film-based items, and in those components you have plastics, you have metal, you have glass, and even for the silicon, we have silicon. And the extractive process that is involved is not, I used to use the word, it's not rocket science, but it is one that really requires some level of expertise in sorting it out. And like Tessa said, a lot of people are now risk savvy, or you use the word lazy to be able to get engaged in doing work that will really have impact. And when we are talking about impact, we are saying that extracting these items and putting them into good use, you're offering not just value for the people that have finally used them, but you're also offering value to the environment, because clearly these items which would have gone extracting from our natural resources and depleting would clearly be in the system a lot longer. Secondly, the economic value to bringing these items that have served their useful time, and then we extract the value of the item and replug it back, improving our GDP, and then activities surrounding the entire value chain informs employment and all. But in our environment, you see, that's why we continue to say that there needs to be a strategic framework for this to thrive, because you are in a unique situation. Manufacturers are battling a lot of issues. First is that the access to funding is not there, because people need to understand, banks need to understand what they are funding and have not just short and medium, but long-term, kind of arrangements that would support, these things to thrive or sit in well. Then secondly comes with this kind of a situation that would allow us to make sure we are getting quality items, recovered and put back into good use. And then spin-offs that will come from various angles of using the items that we extract. They are basic items, and they can come out to help us in managing even the imports that we are currently doing, because being so import dependent is a huge loss to us, because there we are currently now suffering from shortages. CBN is clearly clearing at the moment. We are suffering from shortages in forex, because every dollar out there is out, being sought out for import activities, and we're not sending items out as exports. So I want to believe that an outcome from this particular dialogue will clearly create some kind of white paper playbook that people that would want to invest in, having to set up mini disassembly locations, where you have a little bit of people that will come in and disassemble these items, and then make sure that we have plastics this way, we have metals this way, and that would collectively create the traction that we will need to support a very good viable renewable energy recycling sector. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, with the ULAB regulation, that's regulation would also be creating, highlighting a lot of opportunity for private sectors to also invest in, like in the area of transportation. I mean, that regulation would stipulate something like you cannot use a vehicle dedicated for carrying ULABs or solar panels to carry food items. So that's an investment opportunity there. Also storage, there's a standard on how ULABs or solar panels ought to be stored. So someone can actually invest in just that storage, and then of course recycling and the other likes. I think there's also one more question, and then I'll leave it to Adobe. And this is from Superman. He says, while the government has a part to play, what about the common man? How does the guy on the streets dispose his, should we say e-waste, because he just rolls to waste sustainably? Okay, so Tessa, start with that.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, it's all about looking at the investment opportunity as regards to the profitability, possible profitability to get involved in the recycling process, the end of life management of renewable energy waste in general. One of the lowest point of this, it really has to do with the collection. And so if you're an investor and you're interested in getting involved in the sector, the first step you need to take is to set up a collection center. Look at the guidelines for setting up collection centers. You must have concrete flooring so that acid does not leak into the floor. You must have a roof overhead so that rain does not fall on this waste and leach hazardous materials into the soil. And of course, then you must come and collect permits from the PRO and then from NESRA to establish this center. And then you start your marketing to collect used batteries from the end user, from the car users, from companies, from banks, from whoever it is that you can reach out to collect as many used batteries as possible. And then you transport these used batteries to a responsible transportation truck. And then you deliver to recycling plants that buy these batteries from you at a margin, and then you make your turnover on the batteries. Now, this is, I get a lot of calls about the investment possibilities, investment options. It's a little bit of a capital-intensive business. An average used battery, renewable energy battery, say a 200 amps battery, costs something like 10,000 naira. So if you're going to buy, let's say, a container, a full container, 25 or 30 ton size of used batteries, you're looking at a minimum of 6 to 7 million naira for just one container of used batteries. So you sell these containers to a recycler, or you export these batteries out of the country, which we can help to facilitate in the exports or even in the recycling. And then you make a margin on every ton of used batteries that you're able to collect and you're able to resell to recyclers. The guarantee for this sector is that there is a ready and available market to take up whatever kind of batteries, especially lead acid batteries, that you can collect. For lithium ion batteries, there is virtually no recycling activity for lithium batteries in the country. All the lithium batteries needs to be collected as it is, wrapped properly according to the Basel guidelines, and exported out of the country. And you will need incentive to do that, because it is actually more expensive to actually collect and export lithium batteries than even to process or to do anything with them. So there must be support and incentive. For lead acid batteries, they have second-hand value. So you can set up collection plants to collect and resell used batteries according to the standard environmental practices, and you can definitely make a profit on that. In fact, you can make a very good profit on it if you have the right capital to go in to get involved in the business. Then somebody mentioned about the small scale collectors, the scrap dealers, and the rest of them. Yeah, this is where there's a lot of challenge, because there's a lot of small scale collectors who collect batteries, break them open, in their backyards, and use open pans to just melt the lead and sell this lead, on the black market. This is one of the highest polluting businesses that you can get involved in, and it is completely discouraged and not permitted for any individual to be involved in any sort of smelting of batteries without having a standard battery recycling plant. So, which is, to set up a battery recycling plant, they're looking at a few millions of dollars. So it is quite capital intensive. But at the lower level of collection, you can do the collection properly and transport these batteries to a recycler, or you bring them to the ARBR, and we can help you channel them to recyclers, and you get paid for the batteries that you collect in your environment or your community, or even your marketing that you can do across corporate organizations. So there's a huge investment opportunity, but you have to be ready with enough capital to start this, and then we can assure you that we can provide you whatever support you need to be successful in this business.
Okay. So I think just in addition, Tessa answered that question an investor's perspective. So for a consumer, I think it's also very, very important that you watch out be careful of where you actually buy your electronic or renewable energy solution. It's good to ensure that you're buying from a dealer or a developer who is certified or who has a waste management plan. You need to be sure that you have that kind of person installing your solar panels in your home. That person needs to be ready to take responsibilities for your waste management that comes from the energy solution. And then it's very important for, as consumers, knowledge awareness, shared information, and report instances. We drive around, you have mechanic, you have car chargers, you see people breaking batteries. It's good to report. Many instances, health incidents we see all over the place are actually as a result of this environmental pollution and pollutants. The acid they drain from these batteries get washed up from the rains and end up in the stream, probably the stream where they actually grow our ugu and our vegetables, and then we end up eating these things, and then you fall sick and blame one innocent grandmama in the village, all of that. So even as consumers, it's really important to buy your materials from the right place, the right standard, association, members of associations, and then, expand this awareness and ask questions. We don't ask questions. The more we ask, the more we get to know to do the right thing.
Ken and Tessa, thank you. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can people? Okay, excellent. So thank you. So the original question was, it's not just government. What is the role of it's a multi-stakeholder activity. Everyone has a role to play with regards to putting together a framework, following guidelines, responsibilities pretty much on all the stakeholders to make sure that this actually works. In the interest of time, we have 8 more minutes, but I really don't want to end this before I want each one of you it's supposed to be 3 minutes, but let's just in 60 to 90 seconds, give your final thoughts, statements, and more importantly, recommendations. I will start with you, Mazi. 3 minutes, final thoughts, recommendations, actions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Adobe. It's been an interesting session, and we have really been able to, x-ray a lot of concerns. We have been able to also identify the opportunities and potentials that lies with this. But then it's everybody is a stakeholder. I see everybody as a stakeholder because we all have roles to play to ensure that we are effective in recovering renewable energy materials for recycling and reuse. And for those that are clearly involved in the production value chain, a lot of commitment needs to be there. Ikena was talking about, having to make sure that you are procuring consumers, making sure that they are procuring items from reliable sources, and also being doing some kind of policing to ensure that we are doing things properly. But then also for the producers, everybody in that value chain needs to also be highly committed. There needs to be set out plans. If you are a battery, for instance, a battery manufacturer, the battery packaging should clearly spell out what needs to be done when that particular item has come to its end of use. Is there a particular stakeholder phone number that is being made available, maybe through regulators, to say this is how you get your stuff done? Is there a website that you have to go that you provide as a producer to say, if you come to my website and you have to go to? So we need to, make it a little bit simplistic, but yet, provide that very seamless opportunity for, us to make this an easy and worthwhile stuff. Because if we don't, we're like sitting on a ticking bomb, and time becomes a lot more shouting about our use of plastics and the issues. So I think it's important. And then from a government perspective, I want to believe that one of the action items from this particular dialogue would inform some kind of
Are we back on?
Yeah, I think we lost Mazi.
We lost audio for a second. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, in the interest of time, let's keep moving. Tese, final thoughts, comments, recommendations, specifically actions. You have 1 minute.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
Well,
30 seconds. Thank you.
Yeah, well, we are happy to engage with all stakeholders, all organizations of goodwill who have shown interest to support this sector and to support the work that needs to be done in the value chain in managing the end-of-life stage of every renewable energy component, from the panels to the electrical equipment, and of course to the most hazardous component of everything, which are batteries. The good thing is that panels have a long lifespan, 20, 25 years, 30 years, so they don't get to end of life that quickly. Batteries get to end of life much quicker, and they contain far more hazardous waste. So it is important that in every strategy that is adopted for managing waste from this sector, batteries have to be very prominent in that process. And so we're happy that REA has taken steps to engage with us to help to control, to participate in the EPR program with their contractors. And we're looking forward to engaging with other development partners who can support the work that we do, help us to build capacity to collect data from this sector, data of all the batteries being installed across the country, both at homes for solar, for small home systems, and also for mini grid systems. So with accurate data on all the installations and the quantity of installation, the type of batteries being installed across the country for renewable energy projects spread across the country, we are better able and equipped to monitor these batteries, monitor their lifespan, and then better provide recommendations on how these batteries can be effectively taken back wherever they are installed across the country and delivered to recyclers who can environmentally soundly recycle these used batteries. So we look forward to more engagement, and we look forward to more partnerships, and then we'll keep in touch as we go on. Thank you very much.
You can last word.
Okay, thank you.
Recommendations, actions, please.
Thank you very much. Okay, so in my last words, I think for the government needs to be very, very deliberate.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Okay, so I think I'll just go ahead.
Did we lose again now?
No,
I
I'm
can
here.
hear you, Ikena. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so for my last word, I think the government needs to be very, very deliberate in addressing the issues as regards to increasing access to electricity and protecting the environment. The government needs to get itself together, all its agencies, MDAs, get them together, move in the same direction.
I think Adobe's network is bad.
Yeah. Okay. Do I take
so
that?
Just go ahead, Ikena. Go ahead, Ikena. Round up. Yeah,
So, like I was saying, the government needs to be deliberate, and the government needs to get itself together. All its agencies, ministries, get them together and move in a singular direction. Investors would not invest when there's so much policy contraction. When you contract yourself, it creates a lot of uncertainty. And I think there's space wide enough for everybody. I would like the government to start to consider the criteria. Keep going, renewable energy, investing in waste management, expand the space and let a lot of people come in there. So expanding that space is looking at the ease of entry into these businesses, bring it at the barest minimum, encourage young people, encourage people to go into the business and then hear me and direct. So I think that's where I'll put my full stop. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Sada, we can hear you.
Please tell me you can hear. So we have 1 minute to go. What I'd like to now do is just give the highlights on the recommendations.
Okay.
So, hello?
Yes,
can we hear me?
Yes,
okay, so a couple of things, couple of red line issues. Out of this, hopefully we should get a clean paper, collate all the information that has been shared in this session, and to share it with follow-up engagements with all the different stakeholders. In terms of stakeholder support, engagements with government, again, capacity building, research. If we don't have data, we're really working blindly. Again, going back to government, but not only government, commitment from the government has to be deliberate. There has to be multi-agency collaboration. We need to expand the space and make it easier for people who are interested to do business in the sector in the country. It is now 6:30, but we do have to hear from the organizers. Just from my part, I just want to really thank everybody. You've been very patient with all the tech issues, but it's our new reality. I've really enjoyed this session. My level of knowledge, certainly, and zeal to continue to ensure that the work I do at Allon and my team at Allon does, to remain committed to raising awareness and aiding advocacy in this sector, that zeal has definitely been increased as a result of a lot of what I've heard in this session. So thank you very much, everybody. Over to who?
I see. Thank you, everybody, for joining the discussion. It was very interactive and insightful. Thank you, Adobe, for being our moderator. Thank you, our panelists, Tesser, Donald, and Mazi, even if his network is bad right now and he can't join us. On behalf of the Electricity Hub, we say thank you for honoring our invitation to join the Renewable Energy Dialogue. But just before we go, I'd like to encourage everyone to log on to our podcasts where we do short episodes on the renewable energy sector, and also subscribe to our newsletters so we keep you informed every day on everything happening in the electricity market. Have a lovely weekend ahead and an even lovelier week.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.